how should one prepare for one of the most important tournaments of the year? Tata Steel starts on Friday. Over the board classical chess. Should one perhaps check up on opening variations? Study technical rook and pawn endgames? Or would you play a stack of online chess and bullet chess? Well, that's what the world champion chose to do, and he was back in action online playing some bullet chess, and we're going to have a look at one of those games. So yes, dr.nykterstein, alternatively known as Magnus Carlsen, was playing on Lichess, and his opponent here is Thomas Beerdsen, who is a Dutch international master. As we can see from his rating on Lichess, 2833. Seems like he's invested a lot of time there and done quite well. Certainly the sign of a misspent youth. I think we should have two different ratings. I think we should have an online rating and an in real life rating. And there's often a great difference between the two. Anyway, on with this game. It is fantastic fun. And I think shows Magnus Carlsen playing with total abandon, just enjoying himself. So remember, bullet chess is where you have 1 minute for all your moves. There is no time to reflect at all. If you start thinking, you will simply lose on time. So it's a sensible start, a Morozzi bind. Now it starts to get a bit wacky. Queen b6. a5. Yeah, it's a very direct plan. You want to play a4 and hammer on b2, but bishop e3 is a good move. And now black starts to pay the price for bringing that queen out at an early stage, because it gets kicked around the pitch. And here, yeah, knight c3 is probably the most sensible, but bishop c3, very understandable in this kind of game. Get rid of that dangerous bishop. But Beerdsen doesn't want that. Knight f6, c5, kick that queen. Ooh, this is really dangerous, leaving the queen in the middle. And here, actually, f3. A sensible defensive move, but far too sensible for this kind of game where, well, a defensive move you don't want to do. You just want to get your pieces out as quickly as possible, of course. That's what Carlsen did. Knight d2. Knight takes e4, and suddenly this is working in black's favour. If knight takes knight, queen takes knight check, and that's better for black. So Magnus just careered on. No time to put the brakes on here. Gives up his queen. Of course he saw that, but yeah, he just doesn't want to slow down here, basically. He's just taking stuff. And it's a very interesting sacrifice because white has very decent compensation here. Black could close that bishop down straight away with f6, but instead knight takes f2. He wants to get some material. He wants to give up his knight for some material. King takes, and now f6. So basically Beerdsen, if he can get that bishop, then he could be material up. But of course, it's not that simple because white's pieces can flood into the game so quickly here. Best move is probably king d8, but, well, with such terrible development, white is always going to have compensation, particularly in a game like this. Queen g8 wants to take that bishop. Bang! Bishop takes pawn. Not so fast. And this is starting to look very tasty for white. If pawn takes, of course, bishop c4 check. Wins the queen. So here, well, I mean, one shouldn't really be analysing a game like this, but queen f8 is going to be the best move, but white certainly has compensation. Queen f7, same idea, pinning the bishop, but after knight e4 there is a massive problem because pawn takes knight, knight d6, check, wins the queen. That is the problem. So Carlsen definitely better now, but it's still tricky. King f8, there's a pin here, so naturally the king steps back. Remember, all this is being played a tempo. No time to think about these moves for either player. Pawn takes bishop, and now the knight comes in. Up, there you go. That is a true octopus knight. Knight d6, hitting the queen. Bishop c4, white pieces just flooding forward here into black's position, and that queen is still getting hit all over the place. These pieces on the queen side make a very sorry impression. White to play. What would you do here? I'm even going to give you time to think about it. Well, in fact, it should be checkmate. After this, and now Magnus instinctively played rook e7. Of course, he didn't bother taking the bishop, but in fact, he could play rook g8, and that's already checkmate. But instead, well, he careered on with rook e7. He knows if the king goes backwards, then that's somehow going to be fatal after knight f7. So the king came forward, and this was Carlsen's idea. Bishop g8, just to smoke out the king. He knows this is good for him. So the queen makes room. Doesn't want to lose his queen. Check. And the king runs out. Now it's time to hunt down the king. Now, I'm sure there are many ways to win this position. Maybe rook f1. Perhaps we can just keep the king trapped in, something like that. But h4 is very attractive because you can do this all with checks. Watch what happens. Rook f1 check. King e3. Rook e7 check. Wow, it almost looks like checkmate straight away. But is the king going to run away? Okay, how do you play this with white? Have a little think. But don't think for too long. Got to play your moves instantly. Of course, there are many, many ways to win this now. But this is very attractive. Bishop c4. The king comes to c2. Rook f2 check. King d1. And now rook d2 is actually mate. But Magnus had spotted something else. Well, he didn't see that one, but he saw this one, which is actually really beautiful. Rook e1 check. Giving up the rook. And then rook f1 is mate, having dragged the king that way. Otherwise, if the king had been checked on d1, then it would still have the c2 square. But having just dragged the king here, rook f1 is mate because d2 is covered by the knight. Now, I'm sure any of us would be proud to play that game. But in a bullet game, where you have to move instantly, that is pretty fantastic. But as I said, I think it's fantastic to see Carlsen just playing with no restraint whatsoever. He's just playing for the fun of it, and it's amazing that he's not afraid to test himself online against much weaker players, although Thomas Beerdsen seems to be pretty good at online chess anyway. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to the Tata Steel tournament that begins this Friday. It has an incredible lineup. Fabiano Caruana, the world number 2, is going to be playing. There are lots of young players. Dubov is playing. Firuz Jah is playing. It's a wonderful lineup. And I mean, anyway, it's always, for me, a highlight of the year. And it's fantastic that they've... it's still going ahead, even in these terrible times, but it's going to be over-the-board chess, classical chess, and of course all the players are arriving early. They're quarantining so that there shouldn't be any problems at all. And, I really look forward to it. So, more coming soon on the PowerPlayChess channel. Thanks for watching.